The following voter education presentation has been made possible with support from Jeff's Pirates Cove, now serving breakfast 7 days a week. On the 25th of August, next Saturday, the voters of Guam are going to be electing a new generation of leaders to lead us through the challenging times facing Guam and our people. Right now, we have revenue shortages because of uncollected taxes that have forced the government to raise taxes on the good people who pay their taxes on time. We have a hospital crisis, we have a healthcare crisis, and we have bad leadership sitting on top of both problems. We have government corruption. When we have government administrators flying all over the United States and the world first class at taxpayer expense and keeping the air miles for their own personal use, that is a symptom of a much bigger problem of government corruption, as we see with Chamorro Land Trust leases. Then we have pork barrel politics that are still plaguing our island, and the door has not been shut. So the next generation of well-connected political insiders is going to try to reap the goods with Guam YTK, GRRP, the Manhita Farms, and many other opportunities that they see still open. And for us voters and taxpayers, it comes down to this: which leaders are going to help improve the quality of life here on Guam? I'm Leon Guerrero, and for those of you who don't know me, I've spent the past 11 years as a community advocate, testifying before government agencies, the legislature, and ADALUP, representing the people of Guam. And the people of Guam, starting 2014, stood up and served notice on our elected officials that we are no longer going to tolerate business as usual. Because the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. And this coming Saturday, August 25th, we get a chance to change our government from one that is more concerned about the financial welfare of well-connected political insiders to one that is more concerned about our welfare. So, all of you out there watching this, I'm encouraging you, don't play party politics. We hear stories that political parties are encouraging voters to vote for who they think is weakest in the Democratic side of the ticket. You should be voting for the candidate that you feel is the strongest, not the weakest. If you're a Democrat or a Republican, you should vote for those in your party that you feel are the best. And I want to again point out that the Republican Party earns no credit, gets no glory in the 2018 elections because they did not do their very best to ensure that the Republican voters had a slate of credible candidates. But I encourage you, Republicans, to vote for the candidates on the Republican side of the ticket that you feel are good and strong Republicans. It's the only way we take control of both political parties away from unelected party leaders. Starting out with my recommendations for governor, I am recommending that voters on the Democratic side of the ticket vote for Frank Uggan. So moving from the governor's race to the Republican side of the ticket for senator, I begin with Mary Torres. Mary Torres of the Republican incumbents definitely needs to be returned. I do not recommend voting for Will Castro because he was basically the administration's errand boy, as was Luis Muñoz in the 34th legislature. And I'm not recommending that we vote for any of the Republican candidates from ADALUP that are running because it shows a little ethical problem as far as I'm concerned. On the Democratic side of the ticket in 2016, Joe San Augustine and Talina Cruz Nelson both resigned from their government of Guam positions before they ran. Here we have 6 candidates from ADALUP earning a paycheck while running for office. And to me, that's an indication that they are more concerned about their personal welfare than they would be the personal welfare of the voters. So definitely don't vote for these 6 candidates. So that brings us to the Republican side of the ticket, who to vote for. And my first recommendation is number 2, Mary Camacho Torres, a very strong Republican, a very strong senator, and one of my favorites personally in the 34th legislature. I'm also recommending number 6, Jeffrey Wheaton, retired federal civil engineer who would bring badly needed scientific expertise and engineering expertise, as well as knowledge of federal processes to the legislature. As would number 8, Ben Servino. Ben Servino is an advocate for people with disabilities, having spent his entire career working for underprivileged populations, such as people with disabilities. And he has extensive knowledge of the federal programs and processes and paperwork. He would be a valuable addition to the 35th Guam legislature. Number 11, James Moylan. He is a businessman who has a long and distinguished career in public service as well as a career in business. And after extensive conversations with him, I am convinced that he would be a good representative in the 35th Guam legislature, champion the concerns of small business. And number 18, Janae Uggan, a person with a very strong commitment to public service prior to running for office, a small business owner, and a person well versed in social work. She would be a very strong addition to the 35th Guam legislature. So let's take a couple of seconds here and look at the Republican team that I am recommending for the 35th Guam legislature. I recommend that Republicans vote for just these 5 people to make sure that they score high enough in the primary that we can pass them easily into and through the general election. Now let's take a look at the Democratic side of the ticket for those of you who will be voting Democrat. I'm pleased to say that for the 5 candidates that the Guam Citizens for Public Accountability recommended in the 2016 election are going to continue their public service careers. So when we look at the incumbents, let's start first with Talina Nelson at number 10, a very strong supporter of the people, as is number 12 on the ballot, Therese Terlahi, and number 16, Joe San Agustin, and number 18, Regine Bisco Lee. Newcomers to the Democratic Party, Laisha, and I apologize, I know I keep messing up her name, but she is very intelligent. She has a very strong demonstration of public service, having spent 3 years on the front lines against the development of the resort in Pago Bay. Jermaine Alerta, he has spent years developing his skills and knowledge working in the legislature so that he thoroughly understands the legislative process, the process of creating, vetting, and sponsoring bills. He would be a very strong addition to this new class of legislators. Clinton Rigel, number 6. His background in media has had him for years now, following the ins and outs of government of Guam through all the issues, and he is going to be a very strong representative of the people in the 35th Guam legislature. As will Maria Lourdes Milligan, also known as Melu, educator. She has a doctorate in science, in botany. She's been an educator, and she's been a very strong supporter of community work through her work in the Lions Club. So she will be a very strong addition to the 35th Guam legislature. As will number 17, Will Parkinson, who also has a very strong commitment to public service and is a small business owner, and he's very concerned about the quality of life of the people of Guam who are struggling from paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet. And that brings us to number 19, Kelly Marsh, another professor, educated, and a person who's very concerned about social issues. She's concerned about the suicide rates, the crime rates, drug addiction, and the level of education among our children. She will be a very powerful voice for helping Guam strengthen our island moving forward. These are the Guam Citizens for Public Accountability recommendations for Democratic candidates to the 35th Guam Legislature. Let's vote strategically. Let's just vote for these 10 candidates. By voting for these 10 candidates only on the Democratic side of the ticket, we make sure they all score high enough to pass on through to the general election and become members in the 35th Guam Legislature. Which takes us to the public auditor. And the moment, actually I'm going to tell you a story here. When I heard B.J. Cruz was retiring, I called him up and gave him the bad news I was going to have to sue him. And he wanted to know why. I told him, because you're leaving public service. You're abandoning us. I'm glad to see that current Speaker B.J. Cruz tossed his hat in the ring once again to continue his service to the public and the people of Guam. And as public auditor, he will bring a new dimension to that office, one that I'm very excited to see him execute. So for public auditor, I recommend Benjamin Cruz. This takes us to the Attorney General's race, which also will be decided in the primary. And my recommendation for that position is Gary Gumatautau. He's been a businessman as well as an attorney. And throughout his entire legal career, he has been a very strong advocate of public service, beginning when he was a child, in junior high school, through college, through his business career, and through his legal career. He is also a strong advocate for the people of Guam when it comes to corruption. So on that basis, I'm recommending Gary Gumatautau for Attorney General. On the Democratic side of the ticket, there's no need to say more than, I recommend Madeline Berdallo, her lifelong career of public service. She did 20 years of public service before she ever became a politician. So for that and her continued dedication to the people of Guam, I am recommending Madeline Berdallo for the Democratic candidate for congressional delegate. Now, on the Republican side of the ticket, we have a new face. We have Doris Flores Brooks. I think Doris Flores Brooks brings a lot of credibility to the Republican Party in particular, and to her plans to run for a congressional delegate in particular. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Doris and Madeline present their cases before the public, because this year is one of the most critical elections that we have, and it is important that we put people in government at all levels of government who are more concerned about the welfare of the people than fattening their own bank accounts. And that's why we have made the recommendations we have made. This voter education presentation by Guam Citizens for Public Accountability was made possible with support from Jeff's Pirates Cove, now serving breakfast 7 days a week.